Perhaps now you understand the functions of brain development in a linear formation, but what happens when development isn't linear and other variables impact what we understand from these stages? Each person is an individual and recognizably develops in slightly different ways, but when looking at the impacts of trauma, those slight differences become noticeably larger. When experiencing stress, we release a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol helps people kick into gear when stress takes over, to squash our problems and rid of our worries. Cortisol is good temporarily for our survival needs. However, persistent and excessive cortisol leads to neurotoxicity in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, destructively impacting on brain development. People who suffer from the effects of trauma have likely experienced the longevity of cortisol, which has then led to the myelination of unhealthy synapses and the pruning of the healthy ones. Once these bad synapses have bonded and grown, it becomes extremely difficult to reverse that process. Perhaps we can link this to John Bowlby's attachment theory, advocating the fundamental importance of children having at least one primary caregiver to share a strong emotional and physical attachment to in order for optimal brain development. These bonds create the scaffolds for support and trust in humans. Without them, we see people become withdrawn from society by the lack of healthy bonds or experience of unstable relationships. Without these bonds that form support networks, people become isolated and experience excessive amounts of stress and/or trauma, which lead to destructive impacts of brain development. I was fortunate enough to have a lot more than just one primary caregiver and therefore grew up with stability and trust, providing me with the necessities to strive for my goals and maintain the stable brain development described throughout this production, which ultimately supports the importance of the attachment theory.